Hello everyone, it is Aussies Like back with Sormon. Hello Sormon.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the Voice Referendum. It was a fail for the Yes campaign. This is the first referendum we've had in 24 years. The first of both of our our voting lifetimes, me and Sormon.
Yeah, well, I was for when the Republic referendum happened.
Yeah, and this was voted no, as you can see here. It was over 60% no, less than 40% yes. The counting has not finished. The counting is about 80% at the moment. So it should end up somewhere around this amount. Who knows if it's going to be a bit more, a bit less, but it's going to be around 60-40. So we'll just quickly go over the results from each state. We got New South Wales about 60-40, Victoria about 55-45, Tasmania also about 60-40, South Australia 65-35, Queensland almost 70%, Western Australia about around 64. Then we have Northern Territory 60-40 to the no, and ACT the only place voting yes, which is about 61-39. And Sorman's currently living in the ACT, but he's from South Australia. So, and I've also lived in South Australia.
I voted in Canberra this time, so
yeah.
I am a resident of the ACT through and through.
Yeah, but he is from South Australia, and before we begin any kind of discussion, I'll mention that both Sormon and I are yes voters. I feel like Sormon probably is a stronger yes voter than I am. I'm still pretty strong of a yes voter, but
I think we're about the same.
Yeah. How do you feel about your home state, South Australia? I did live there for 4 years, but I'm living in New South Wales now, and that's where I grew up and everything. But how do you feel about your home state voting 65-35? It's a bit of a surprise to most people, I think.
Well, let's take a look at the wider picture. Was this result unexpected? No. The polling had for years indicated this was the likely outcome.
No, what do you mean for years? What are you talking about for years? Look at this opinion polling.
Read this out. The polling has for weeks shown that
since around July, basically. Yeah.
The polling has for weeks showing that no had the clear advantage and was just getting further and further into the lead. So it doesn't surprise me that it won. However, South Australia did catch me by surprise.
Yeah. I didn't expect that South Australia would be a higher no vote than Western Australia.
That part quite shocked me. And the fact that, like, not even Adelaide or Boothby, the two sort of more progressive
Boothby
states.
was ahead. Like, yes, was ahead in Boothby. I've got, like, it here. It was ahead for a little bit, I saw. And I was kind of surprised, like, Boothby.
So South Australia is the only state with absolutely no yes seats.
That's right. Boothby and Adelaide came somewhat close, but still was a no. Yeah.
So that's upset me quite a bit. Like, Queensland and Tasmania and Western Australia at least had at least 2 seats that voted yes. It just it upsets me as a South Australian to know that my state's going to be known as the one that vehemently rejected it. Not the most, obviously Queensland, but next to Queensland.
So I'll just quickly say I am from New South Wales. As I said, I've lived in South Australia for 4 years, but I'm enrolled in the seat of Barton, which is an interesting seat because that is Linda Burney. I'm trying to find it on here. It's a bit difficult.
It's next to Banks.
I tried to Linda Burney, who is the Indigenous minister's seat, and this voted no 56-44. So clearly, if she was campaigning in the seat, it wasn't amazingly effective. I did vote. Yeah, I wanted to. I kind of wanted to take the piss. So I don't know. I just felt like it. So I put a tick as my vote. So that's supposed to be formal. It's supposed to be formal if you put a tick.
I believe it's an informal vote.
No, it's a formal. It's a formal vote.
Formal. Oh,
there was a whole drama about that where like ticks would be counted as yeses and crosses would not be counted as no's, and like the no campaigning was getting like super pissed off about it. They were like, the campaign it's rigged and all this kind of stuff.
Not a big issue, but writing the word yes and no seems like a very archaic way to run an election. Had I known about that sooner, I would have been more advocate. We really need like a 2-box one, in my opinion, like a yes box and a no box, and you just tick the box you want.
I mean, I guess that makes
I don't know why
sense.
we don't have that. This whole writing yes no seems very archaic.
Yeah, it seems like I agree actually. Now that you mention it, yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about this referendum in this video about why it failed, and where do we go from here, for people. Well, I guess for anyone who's advocating for Indigenous issues. So Sormon, do you wanna start us off?
Yeah, so I guess a place to start is where did this come from? And so obviously, the voice referendum basically first really got big in 2017 when obviously it was brought up at the Uluru Statement of the Heart conference with Aboriginal elders, and it's sort of been tossed around a bit in Parliament as sort of a thing to do.
And it was actually the Uluru Statement of the Heart sort of developed from Tony Abbott. Actually, he was like, we want to find out what the Indigenous people want. I'm pretty sure he was the architect behind that whole situation.
Yeah, Albo in his winning speech in 2022 at the election, the first thing he said basically after winning was, "I'm committed to an Uluru Statement of the Heart," and that's really where it started to go from being just a thing to be tossed around by politicians to real genuine action being taken. Initially, I wasn't hugely invested in it. Aboriginal rights has never been one of my political strong points, so I haven't paid attention to it that much until more recently. Obviously, when it became quite a big deal with this referendum coming up.
There was talk around how the coalition initially was sort of maybe supportive of the idea of a voice to Parliament or something like that, but I guess they were always wishy-washy about it. They were never really clear. And when Dutton became leader in 2022, that obviously is going to change things. Like whatever decision they had before maybe won't be the same decision. So Dutton was always going to say no. Like, do we ever think that Dutton was ever going to say yes?
Well, like, I like to try and give people the benefit of the doubt.
I don't give Dutton the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that guy deserves the benefit of the doubt. He's clearly lack of integrity.
You need to at least trust people, like every now and then. Like if we can't ever trust, we can't have people just completely write off. Okay. Even someone as horrendous as Dutton.
Okay.
But like to put it this way, he claimed to be a new person, right? He, after the brutal defeat of the coalition in the last election, like he was very much talking about how he wants to reform the Liberal Party and get this new image that he can sell to.
Well, that's all bullshit. That's all bullshit because it's really just the status quo. Honestly,
it's pretty clear now that it was.
Yeah.
But like back then, like as much as I was pretty sure it was BS, I wanted to give. I was happy to give him a chance. Like because if it turned out he was genuine, great. And also someone like Gillian Leeser was a bit iffy about some of the stuff he said in the lead up to The Voice. He generally seemed very passionate about getting it through, so I was really glad that he was sort of on board.
Sorry?
Julian Leeser, the former Shadow Indigenous Affairs Minister. He was from Barawa.
Right. Yeah. They kicked him off. They kicked him off the party or something because he was supportive of yes.
So when Dutton opposed The Voice, it made it that Liberal policy was you cannot
be a minister,
advocate for The Voice and be a minister. So Julian Leeser moved to the backbench so he could advocate for it.
Yeah.
Alongside people like Bridget Archer.
And then is that when Jacinda Price became Indigenous?
Yes, which was considered a very weird move because the Liberal shadow cabinet, which is like 11 people, is 6. It's like 6 Liberal, 5 Nationals.
Yeah.
And by basically having Julian leave and just letting Price take it, he was giving 6 seats to the Nationals with nothing in return. He gave away one of the Liberals' seats to the Nationals, which is a very weak move. I don't know, maybe weak is odd move. Like it's, why would you just give away your own political power like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all it's all strategic at the end of the day. It's all we'll some kind of strategy behind it.
I think we'll talk about Price a bit later.
Okay, sure. But Dutton decided it was always going to be a no from him. In my opinion, a lot of the talk. I've been watching listening to a lot of ABC today, and there has been a lot of coalition people saying stuff like Albo should have compromised more, or he should have come to the table and made some kind of deal with the coalition or something, so that we'll have bipartisan support. And I don't know what the hell they're talking about because how can you this is what Albanese put to the people is exactly what the Indigenous people wanted, exactly what the Uluru Statement of the Heart suggested. So I don't know how you can compromise on this, and it's a really moderate proposal. Like it's really nothing like that large. It seems to be, and I guess we'll get into it, that it doesn't matter how small it is. If you are saying, if you are asking the Australian people, should the Indigenous people get something and nobody else gets that, people are always going to say no. Like, they just do not like the idea of affirmative action at all. They do not like the idea of a certain minority group getting a certain thing. It's not even about rights. It's just about like them getting a certain thing and other people not getting a certain thing. And they especially don't like it if it's in the Constitution.
Yeah, but like I think we went through a few topics there. I want to talk first of all about the whole doing why this sort of no compromising thing. Albo, you're right. Albo was doing what Indigenous people had asked him for. He had 12 months. There was 12 months after the election in which he was open to consultation. This is what really pissed me off about Dutton. There was 12 months of which Dutton did nothing until like the last 1 month, had like one brief talk with Indigenous leaders, and then basically after they tried to tell him why they thought it was important, he was very sort of, apparently to them, he said they were very forthcoming and acknowledging of him. And then like that afternoon, he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to vote for this. This voice is stupid." Like people talk about Albo's divisiveness. Dutton literally stabbed Aboriginal elders in the back, and like calling them activists and like almost like lumping them in with like, well, the whole term is inner city elites, which is a term I'm actually I'm getting quite offended by, because it's a really disgusting term. Like, you talk about how Albo's dividing the country, yet these no voters refer to people of the inner city as like out of touch and, you know, not in lockstep with the rest of Australia, basically saying we're on the wrong side of history.
Yeah, well,
which
yeah, I think it's.
How would you like it if I called rural farmers like regressive and old-fashioned?
Yeah, no,
like,
I think
that'd be unacceptable.
It's a term.
But why is it acceptable for they to call people like us?
Maybe it's a sign of the kind of strategy that the coalition are moving towards now.
It's a very divisive strategy. Like, so we'll get to this in a bit later.
Yeah,
but like, it's gonna it's pitting Australians against each other.
It shows that the coalition have sort of given up on winning back those teal seats and now want to sort of focus on their strategy of like winning back other, you know, random seats across the country. Like, I don't know if they're going to try to sort of like appeal to the kind of people who voted for like Dai Lee and Fowler. Like, are they trying to sort of appeal to like socially conservative people who may not necessarily like care too much about like the economic issues?
The Liberals have, this is a bit off topic, which I don't want to get too lost into it. The Liberals have very much been trying to pivot Australia to a American style political system where basically they represent conservative social values rather than conservative economic values. So we in Australia still have sort of typical business class right wingers and working class left wingers. Whereas in America, the business and working class are on both sides. It's more about where you culturally stand, less so than where you economically stand. And the Liberals have been trying to pivot Australia to that basically since the Howard era. And this is just another one of those steps where they're trying to do that.
Okay, so the article, I just want to talk a little bit about this article that I've got up here, which is the somebody answering the 15 questions that Dutton had for Albanese, I believe earlier in this year, about the Voice, which Dutton says that Albanese refused to answer. And I'm not sure about, you know, what Albo's response was to this, to these 15 questions. But I would say that if Albo did not indeed respond to these questions, I think that there's two reasons as to why he wouldn't have done it. The first reason is because the Voice was always meant to be legislated by the Parliament, and a lot of people, including myself, did not understand that until very recently, that the Voice, the way it's going to behave is going to be very much up to the Parliament. It's not going to be the Constitution it's not already, there's no draft bill already set up. There's no draft like model already set up, and
I do want to talk about that afterwards because
Okay.
I do think that was one of the big flaws of the
Okay.
Yes campaign.
Um, so there's basically Dutton's questions are all about like how is the voice going to work like practically, and that's basically that's up to the parliament. And I didn't yeah, as you're saying, as you're basically you're suggesting, I didn't understand that. A lot of people didn't understand that, and I think the reason that Albo wouldn't have answered these questions is because it would have absolutely complicated the referendum to such a degree that people would have completely switched off and they would have voted no. And like the whole "if you don't know, vote no" thing would have been like, it would have been even more effective if Albo tried to answer all of these questions.
Yeah, but so this is obviously a lot of this was in response to the Republic referendum. So there was a wide agreement in the Republic debate that why the Republic referendum failed is there was a split in the Yes group. There were the symbolic Republicans who wanted just a appointed president, just basically Australia but without the monarch, and then there were the true Republicans who wanted an actual president with veto power.
Yep.
And so basically, when they went with the symbolic republic, a lot of the true Republicans voted no, with hopes that it would get people more passionate to go for the true republic.
Right.
And that's partly why it lost. And so there was this big issue with this voice campaign that the most important thing was that there is a voice,
Yeah.
not what the type of voice is. So
Yeah.
the voice vote wouldn't be split. However, I think as we've seen now, they went too far in the other direction, and as a result, they just left this as a very wishy-washy, not exactly vaguely defined thing. Which
I don't know if it's the media's fault, but I did not hear until very, very recently, very like within the next last maybe like month or so, that the Parliament will be deciding all the details of the voice. There's no current model. There's nothing really been set up yet. It'll be up to the Parliament. I had not heard about this until like a month ago, and I feel like Albanese, I don't know, as I said, I don't know if this is the media's fault, but Albanese or someone on the Yes campaign should have been very, very clear a long time ago that the model will be decided by Parliament. We're just voting for a voice, you know.
I want to be brutally honest to the Yes campaign.
Yeah.
They did a terrible job in selling this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for months in the lead up to this campaign, I watched multiple news articles in which Yes campaigners like Linda Burney, she was one of the more better ones, but especially a lot of the Aboriginal elders who drafted this legislation, I can't remember their names, unfortunately.
Well, there's Marjorie Langton.
Them in their discussions. Go on.
Marjorie Langton,
Sorry?
which is, I mean, she's one of the most prominent people on the Yes campaign. She was the one who said that like
no more welcome to country. If
yeah, and she said basically that the No campaign is racist, or like a lot of. Well, she said a lot of the No campaign is racist, basically. Yeah.
But going away from the racism marks, it was also lines like, "Oh, the Voice is an open invitation by Aboriginal people. We're holding out our hand. We're asking you to take it." I'm sorry. What does that even mean? Like, the Voice is as a request for an advisory body. It's a request. It's not an invitation. Like, this weird symbolic language, like, it doesn't. I don't know anybody. Like, I was looking at that as a Yes voter, going, "What are you talking about?" Like, and unfortunately, maybe you think the symbolism sounds nice and good on paper, but to me, it looks like you don't think Australians are smart enough to understand what it is physically. Like,
yeah,
it's
an appeal to emotion.
Policy.
It's an appeal to emotion instead of appealing to sort of like a practical need.
There was way too much emotion appealing on the Yes side, and not in the kind that like gets you motivated. It was kind of the kind that was trying to make you feel sorry for Indigenous people, and I think in general most Australians already do that, and so it didn't really change anything. The reality was this was a campaign by a bunch of people who are passionate about Aboriginal affairs, but just had no idea how to play the political game, up against a bunch of people who did not really care about Aboriginal affairs at all, but knew very well how to play the political game. As much, I'm not a conservative, so a lot of the no talking points, like, oh, it's going to divide the country and we shouldn't put race in the constitution and Albo's out to do this Canberra voice thing, that didn't affect me, but I can see how that would be potent to people I know in my community.
Especially people who are pretty politically apathetic, who kind of just want to know what this thing is and what it isn't, and usually if people don't really know what something is, they're going to say, okay, we probably just don't want to, we probably shouldn't have it. I think it's just generally really difficult to convince Australians to support something that's outside the status quo.
We did do it. Just a reminder. So in this dark time, we did get the same-sex marriage plebiscite through with with higher yes in that. It was like 66 or something. It was over 60. So
I mean, like, I don't know why that is so different. Why that was such I guess because that was sort of viewed as like an equality issue and not like an equity issue. I think that's why it's so different. But you're right that
it also had the advantage that around the world it was being legalized all at the same time.
Yeah,
it wasn't like 3 other countries also had voice referendums or just legislated voices that we had sort of to look at.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll briefly talk about the idea of another republic referendum and basically all of what everybody has said, right? Like when I was listening to ABC today, is that we're not going to have a republic referendum for a long time now. At this point, like after this, like it's not going to happen for ages now. Like if the Voice won, I could see Albo doing it next term, but now that the Voice was lost and it lost so badly, and not only was it lost so badly, but it was lost so badly when it came from apparently a winning position about a year ago. It's just going to make it completely politically dangerous to even consider the idea of a republic referendum. And I honestly think if there was a republic referendum today, despite the fact that we have King Charles and not Queen Elizabeth anymore, I think that it would fail even more than it did in 1999 because people are... Well, I guess like there's...
I also remind you, 1999 was like right at the height of the Diana saga.
Yeah, that's right.
And exactly, she just died in a car crash, and there was all this hatred towards the royal family.
Yeah,
that's not there anymore.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that people... I don't know if it's because we're in such we're in an economic crisis and we've been through COVID and everything like that, but I feel like people are just more afraid of going into the unknown. So I think it would be, I don't think I don't think that's going to happen, a republic referendum at all. And probably
it really take a scandal from Charles to get the momentum going for that.
And it obviously would seem really politically opportunistic if like, I don't know, Charles, like, I don't know, like did something horrible and then Albanese just immediately was like, yeah, let's go for a referendum. So you can't even really,
Barbados.
You can't even really do that. So there's been a lot of sort of like obviously of talk from the left or people. Yes, I'll say people in the Yes campaign. I should say that the reason that the Voice failed was things like, I mean, I'm on Twitter, like, things like racism, people believing that the Aborigines don't deserve anything, or people believing that the Aborigines have enough, they don't deserve more, or there's like talk of like disinformation. My question to you is, if we didn't have that, if the No campaign was a lot more sort of good faith, where they didn't resort to they did resort to lies a lot of the time.
They lied.
Yeah, they lied. But if that didn't happen, if they were good faith, and if they also presented the idea that that the Indigenous people do deserve more than because of the disadvantage that they face. Do you think that the no campaign would have still won, or do you think that the yes? Do you think that it would have meant that they had nothing to go on and the yes campaign would have won? Do you think that these dirty tactics that were like really like harnessing things like fear and sort of like in the background racism?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say because obviously as a yes voter, I came to the conclusion of yes because I really didn't see any downsides to this.
Mm-hmm.
The worst this thing could be would be an ineffective waste of money. Like it just doesn't. The leaders are not effective at their job. They're not good at identifying Aboriginal problems. They're not effective at communicating with the government, and we end up just paying a bunch of people to sit around.
And I don't think it's. I think it's
that's the worst thing that could happen. It was never going to divide the nation. It was never going to.
Well, there's the question
Aboriginals come and try to steal your houses.
That there would be put in our sacred constitution. A lot of people don't even give a fuck about the constitution, but suddenly they care about.
They don't even. None of these people have read the Constitution.
No. Okay, nobody gives a fuck about
referendums, and I only read like bits and pieces of it.
But like the idea is that in our quote unquote sacred Constitution, we should not be putting anything that says one race deserves this thing and other races don't. But I feel like there is sort of, because of the fact that the Aboriginals are our Indigenous people, I don't think that that's such a big deal. I mean, if you're going to say that the Indigenous people are the first peoples, which is a pretty big thing, and that's people like Dutton they want that. People like John Howard want that, to say that the Indigenous people are our first people. If you're going to say that, like, what's the problem with giving them, something as well in the Constitution? Like, it does it really matter that you're saying one race deserves one thing in the Constitution? Like, is it gonna really? It's like the slippery slope argument. It's like, oh, if we allow this, then we're gonna give them this, and we're gonna give them that, and give them that. No, nobody's suggesting that. All we're suggesting is this one little thing given to Indigenous people, but that was apparently a big deal. So another thing that I want to briefly touch on is the No campaign saying that Indigenous people didn't actually want the voice, and it was all just like as you said, the elites, the Canberra, the inner city, the leftists, like the virtue signalers. It's all them. It's not the Indigenous people.
Communists, if you ask Warren Mundy.
Yeah. So Anthony Green has pointed out that in remote communities that the Indigenous remote communities did vote in favor of a voice. It wasn't quite on average the 80% that a lot of the yes.
It wasn't quite the 80%.
No, no, but it was between maybe 60 and 65%, which after like I mean, Indigenous people are as likely to get persuaded by the arguments from the No campaign as anyone else.
One of the things that has annoyed me so much about this campaign is now Warren Mundine and Jacinta Price, especially Price, I've now been turned into the poster child of what real Aboriginals want. It's a disgusting I really especially Price. She has just become I know this is strong words, but she feels to me like she has just become a spokesperson of oh look, sweet, an Aboriginal person that confirms all my conservative biases.
Yeah. Well, she's a token.
She has gone out there. She's a token. She's gone out there and basically, said, oh, Aboriginal people, they just need to work harder. There's no systematic oppression. Colonization ended years ago. These people are just lazy. And as a result, all of News Corp just kept handing her a mic.
Well, she's an amazing asset.
She was paraded around.
Yeah, she's an amazing asset for the campaign to have.
And meanwhile, tons and tons and tons of Aboriginal leaders who were supportive of this were given the cold shoulder. Like, it was clear. Someone said the other day, it was like, three or four Indigenous leaders were given, and it's like 4% of Indigenous people were given 90% of the coverage. This isn't even like a 50-50 thing where like 50% Linda Burnett. Price was paraded around way more on Sky News than like any Indigenous person.
Well, it's Sky News. What do you expect?
In favour of The Voice.
It's Sky News. What do you expect?
Yeah, but that and like Channel 9 and 7, they all play along with this notion that Indigenous leaders were divided when this
Channel 9, Channel
one
7.
loudmouth freshman senator from the Northern Territory.
Yeah.
Like her own community voted overwhelmingly yes. So the idea that she even speaks of her own community is a joke. Now, I want to just quickly bring. I heard that some abuse was hurled at her family and stuff, and like while I think she has done more to hurt the progress of Aboriginal people. Yeah. Obviously,
I don't know. I do
not accept
I honestly don't
leveled against her family, who are private citizens.
I honestly don't give a shit because like what I heard is that like there was an egg thrown at her house and some paint thrown at her house. Like, like honestly, she fucking deserved like if you're gonna like basically be part of a campaign that propagates lies and hurt what Indigenous people have been wanting and been working for years. Like I just don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about her family.
Parents deserve that, even they're private citizens.
I don't give a shit because they associate with her. They're probably pretty proud of her, what she's done. So I play my fucking tiny violin at that whole situation. It doesn't bother me in the slightest, really. Like I just don't care. But yeah, like so Indigenous people did support this. There's there's so many lies. There were so many lies like spouted by the No campaign, like like you talked about it before you had this call, like that the UN was going to use it to take people's land or something, and then there was obviously the lie that the Uluru Statement of the Heart was actually 26 pages. There was this one woman who said that I think she mistook. She said the wrong thing. I don't know that it was 18 pages long. She was mistaken, and they just hounded on that. Like obviously that was her mistake, but if they were in good faith, the campaign, they could have just seen like, she probably didn't say the right thing or something like that, or she can't speak for the rest of the people. But like they just grasped on every single little lie they could get, that like the Voice Parliament is going to make it so that like the RBA can't cut interest rates, or that they can dismiss a prime minister by talking to the Governor General or something, or they could they will ensure that Australia has a percentage of GDP, or they have a veto right on, and like it's all in bad faith. It's all in bad faith.
One of the biggest ironies of all this is this was a grassroots campaign where basically the government listened directly to people on the ground and tried to do something for people on the ground, and lost to a political apparatus. Albanese, at all points, could have said to these people, this voice thing, it's too contentious. I'm just going to, ignore half your things and only just put a Indigenous recognition in the Constitution, just Indigenous recognition. I'm going to do what Dutton is. I'm going to work with Dutton and have the Liberals, which clearly the Liberals were not getting the information from. They were just doing whatever they felt they wanted to do rather than listening to Aboriginal people. The Liberals clearly just wanted to put their own things, their own spin into the bill. They never had the interest of like doing what Aboriginals wanted. They wanted to do what they wanted.
Yeah.
So Albanese could have joined the Liberals and do that. Just once again, pass a piece of legislation for Aboriginal people, written by, a bunch of white guys who have very little connection with these Aboriginal communities. They could have done that, and it could have passed. But instead, they went with the model that these Indigenous people wanted.
I know what you're saying. It would have been more politically expedient if Albo just either did a referendum on recognition in the Constitution, or B, just passed a law to make a voice, through Parliament, and not bother putting it in the Constitution. But that's not what was asked for. I just want to say that the reason I voted yes ultimately was, or the reason I decided yes, I'm definitely going to vote yes, is because I was absolutely sick of the lies and misinformation and the bad faith of the No campaign, and I just said, all right, fuck you. I'm not supporting you at all, because it was completely in bad faith, and that just shows how much of like how much what the basically the conservative movement in Australia has devolved into.
But regardless of the conservative movement, the reality is this is a part I've still not got my head around. Why wasn't the voice first legislated so that we had a physical voice to go off before the referendum? I can't speak about other aspects of the campaign. Like, could the Indigenous people have sold it better? Could the Prime Minister maybe have taken a bit more command? Because Albert did a pretty decent job in selling it. Um, I don't know if those things would, but I feel like had there been an actual voice and had it been successful with tangible results, and if we like delayed the referendum for like another for 2 years to give the referendum to give the voice a chance to show itself, I feel like there was a good chance this thing could have succeeded. Like the argument then would have been like, oh, why didn't you've already got it? Why didn't you put in the constitution where you could be like, well, we need to make sure it stays around and doesn't get undermined by future governments. I think there would have been a stronger case to make. This is the biggest. This is the one issue I have. The biggest issue I have with the SDM is I just don't know why we chose to do the referendum first and not the legislation first,
Oh well, I think it's probably just because
and why
that's what
Indigenous
the
people were so against.
yeah. Well, I think that's just what the Indigenous people asked for, and I think it's because it was important for them for Labor and the left to put the it in the constitution. The voice. I think it's also because of the fact that we've had a voice in the past that it kept on getting repealed. So like I feel like also would have like it would have taken too long. Like basically we like would have legislated a voice in Parliament, and then we would have had to wait like 5 years to see like how effective the voice was in Parliament before we actually did anything. And I also think that the voice is probably most effective when the coalition are in power, because I feel like the Labor Party are more likely to listen to what Indigenous people have to say, but the voice ensures that even when the Labor Party are not in power, that the coalition basically have to listen to Indigenous people.
The reality is, due to this move, a legislative voice is now almost impossible. And like I'm also now worried for the legislated state voices. So obviously, one of my first concerns as a South Australian, seeing the South Australian result, is what is happening to the SA voice. So I have looked up a bit online and read some of the news articles. It appears that the Attorney General in South Australia, I forgot his name, he is currently pushing forward with the voice. Elections are due to happen in March next year. And so hopefully they are going to commit to that.
I don't think it really matters because
pressure.
I don't think it actually matters that much, because the point is whether or not the voice should be enshrined in the Constitution. That's what people voted for, and that's what people probably didn't want. So I don't think it actually matters that much about state voices and stuff like that. And as I said, like I don't think a legislated like federal voice is really that important when it's the Labor Party are more likely to just listen to what Indigenous people want anyway. Like they don't have to. It's more like, and the coalition will just repeal it anyway when they're in power, like what Tony Abbott did when he was in power.
But either way, getting back to the federal topic, I do feel like this is a lot like 2019 again, where Labor tried to be the ambitious party, a party that tried to, this is me getting annoyed at my sort of more lefty friends who keep telling me how garbage Labor is because they won't, do ambitious policies. But they did ambitious policies in 2019 and they lost, and they've done it again here. They have tried to, do the right thing by these people's books and do this voice, and this is what happens. And this is why I've been telling people this is why Labor's cautious. Like, if they're not cautious, they're just going to have things blow up in their face. And I know it's a hard sell, but I feel like Labor's tried to be ambitious here, and as a result, I think I'm generally concerned that reconciliation has been delayed by at least another 5, if not 10 years. This result has pushed us back. Labor is going to be they're going to be under a lot of pressure to do stuff for Indigenous people. I know some people are hopeful that like all the talk about Indigenous rights is going to do more, and I hope so. But I'm just worried that any policy announced by the government is going to be shouted down by the coalition and their buddies in the media ecosystem. Like, you can't do a truth telling community. That's too much like a voice that Australia overwhelmingly rejected. Oh, you can't do this because Australians clearly show they don't want that. By the voice, like the voice referendum is going to be thrown around every time the government tries to do anything for Indigenous people.
Anything to do with the Uluru Statement of the Heart has basically become toxic now that the voice has failed, because it was sort of like all part of the same thing. So I don't think a truth telling process or the treaty is something that really can be done. I think that there was talk about it, like the Labour Party are thinking of doing like a truth thing, but or at least the Greens were pushing for it. But I think that probably what the Labour Party will have to do now, and I guess what is maybe beneficial for Indigenous people, is they'll have to focus on practical solutions. But I mean that we've always wondered, what exactly are those practical solutions? Like Dutton wants like a royal commission into child sexual abuse. He wants to keep kids in like boarding schools so they don't go home to their families after school.
That sounds a lot like a certain stolen generation policy.
I mean, he wants basically to put them all back on the the welfare, cashless welfare card, bring that back and stuff like that. So all these quote unquote practical solutions are really they're really paternalistic, and they really sort of like, I guess
they're also solutions from like 50 years ago.
They're all
that
bigoted
was shown
towards the Indigenous people.
Worked terribly.
So I don't know exactly what I guess like the whole point of the voice was like, let the Indigenous people tell us what they want, and then we can. And then we basically, if they then we're not really responsible for them. They're responsible for themselves because they can say what they want. So
in some respects, I actually think the spotlight being put on Indigenous people is actually going to make the situation worse. My honest opinion is actually better if more people, like the people who got all round up in this campaign, forget about this. Because if they forget about this, it will allow the government breathing room to actually implement policies to help Indigenous people. Because I think the more the camera's on them and the more the government is seen passing spending bills and other sorts of policies aimed at helping Indigenous people, the less there's going to be this reactionary backlash that we saw in this voice referendum, and the more I think the government can get stuff done behind the scenes. Because a lot of good stuff happens by the government that we often don't talk about because it's just considered run-of-the-mill. And I honestly think it's better that we go back to that. Like, back to the government just doing stuff for Aboriginal people behind the scenes, where the Indigenous people know it's happening to them, the government knows it's happening, and the people involved in this stuff know it's happening, but the general public, is oblivious because I feel like the general public is... Again, what sucks is I want to consider myself a populist, but this referendum is just another horrible pill in the taste of why we don't why we have a representative democracy and not direct democracy.
Yeah.
Because direct democracy is so much at the whim of, at the whim of mob rule and
I understand
doing whatever. People are not rational actors, unfortunately.
What, like, in your opinion, why was the Liberal Party, the National Party, and basically the right establishment, the real elites, people like Clive Palmer and
against it?
Yeah, why were they so against this? Like, what were they afraid of?
Generally, I don't think they were afraid. What they wanted is to hurt Albo.
Yep. Right. Okay.
The Liberal Party is currently hopeless. Mm-hmm. They have no chance of winning the next election. Their polling numbers are terrible, and so they needed something that they could throw at the Prime Minister, and this was just perfect right wing red meat because like they can do their racist dog whistles. They can talk about being costing money. Like obviously, the right never believes in they've never believed in systematic oppression. They basically believe people are poor just because they're lazy. They don't believe in the idea that you can be poor because of systematic oppression, unless it's on them. If it's on like their voters, then it's apparently true. But against everyone else, it's no, you're just lazy. You need to work harder.
So it's basically it just basically appeals to all the right wing talking points, which are their base and what they're trying to appeal to.
Yeah, unfortunately. And so that's why it was in their interest to have this fail, because have you noticed what one of the first things that got brought up after this referendum failed? Albo's resignation.
Right.
It's everyone rumblings are in the Labour Party that Albo should resign, and I'm just like, I don't think he is. I think if he was going to resign, like David Cameron resigned like the day after the Brexit referendum.
Yeah.
So Albo hasn't resigned, and it's been 2 days. So I'm pretty sure he's not about to resign.
No, it wouldn't make any sense. Like he went to the election saying that he was going to bring this referendum, and he was supportive of it.
And also, it'd be suicidal for Labour to switch leaders.
Yeah,
it's just going to make them look unstable.
You're always going to get people who are going to call for people to resign.
I'm pretty sure the media. So they apparently said they was in the Labour Party, but I really think that's them lying. This media is ridiculous.
I think that you're 90% right that it was purely political. I think that there is also a fear that the Indigenous voice would be harmful for the coalition to do whatever they wanted to do, because at every single issue you would have the Indigenous voice saying, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. So it's another sort of mouthpiece to go against the coalition. So I think that there was a small fear, but I think you're right in that it was purely political, and they knew that if this referendum was to succeed, that it would be even harder to sort of dispatch Albo from his what was earlier in the year basically a political honeymoon, which he'd had for a long time. So I think you're right. I think it was mostly just political, and I guess that adds to why it was such bad faith, because they didn't really have any integrity to begin with.
Well, let's stay on the political topic, and let's talk a bit more about the impact of this referendum on the next election.
Yep.
There has been a general consensus going around that places that voted yes are clear indicators that the Liberals are not winning those seats.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, that's because all the Till seats voted yes, and Bradfield. Bradfield is currently the only Liberal seat.
Yeah.
So it's the seat of Paul Fletcher.
That was almost won, I believe, by Teal last election, or Teal.
Yeah, it was almost won by Teal last election.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of rumblings on whether or not Bradfield could fall to the Teals.
Yeah.
At the next election. So it's the one possible seat that could fall. Alongside Bradfield, all the 2 seats won. But on the other hand, people are not so convinced that all the seats that voted no are going to be won by the coalition. Several seats, like Cornwall, I believe, voted no in the same-sex marriage plebiscite. Yet returned their Labour members. And I think there was a few in West Sydney as well. Usually with large Muslim communities.
The plebiscite wasn't a
against,
Labour thing,
against
though.
the plebiscite.
It wasn't.
Yeah, but they voted against the plebiscite, but still re-elected their Labour members.
Yeah, but the plebiscite wasn't a Labour thing, though. It was a coalition thing.
No, but even then, Labour basically didn't even have a conscious vote. Like everyone was going to vote yes, and I think they all voted yes willingly. I don't know much about. It's a while ago, but they voted yes, even though their electorates voted no in a few cases. But it didn't really hurt them when it came to 2019 or 2022, and so that's why a lot of people really don't think these seats voting no are suddenly going to be locks for the coalition.
Absolutely not. Like it's just, people will be socially conservative but will vote for Labour because it's not important. It's not as important for them as economic issues at the end of the day.
And if there is a silver lining, I think this referendum might possibly cause the LNP to overplay their hand The case in point I point to is a lot of those. Do you remember all those parties that, like, even to this day, are still like ragging on about like lockdowns and vaccine mandates
Yeah, yeah,
in 2023?
yeah,
And like, oh, we're gonna punish all the doctors that pass vaccine mandates and
yeah.
all the lockdowns. We're gonna get revenge for that. To which the people kind of go, why are you still talking about COVID in 2023?
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect there is a possibility if the Liberals aren't smart,
Yeah.
they will continue to ramp on about the voice referendum. Oh, he had this divisive voice referendum 2 years ago. We had to vote him out. And people are going to be like, why are you still talking about the voice referendum in 2025? And if the Liberals overplay their hand, it could really come round to bite them in the ass at the election.
I feel like Dutton is smarter than that. I don't think you get into a position like Dutton has, as opposition leader unless you're smarter than that. But I agree that there may be a little bit of overconfidence now that this has happened amongst a lot of the coalition.
I'll be interested to see where polling goes in the next few months federally, because it is a very much a possibility that a overambitious Liberal Party will shoot themselves in the foot, thinking that this referendum is some sign of some conservative resurgence.
I believe that the Labour Party will probably recover from their little slump that they've gone in at the moment.
Yeah, I think they're going to recover too. Just because the reality is, as much as everyone's like, "Oh, why is Albo so focused on the voice referendum?" He isn't. You're the ones that are too focused on the voice referendum. Like Albo. I've actually really liked how much Albo has run a decentralized ship. Linda Burney did the voice referendum. I forget the guy who's doing the IR reforms. But you have Richard Marles doing AUKUS. You have Penny Wong repairing our relationships with foreign affairs. Is it Jason Clare doing the education reforms? Like they've all got their different jobs, and Albo's been sort of jumping between all of them, helping them all out.
There has been a view though that the voice has been a distraction for the Labour Party, and they've been able to kind of skirt on other issues by focusing on the voice.
I disagree with that. I think I've been focusing on maybe it's me. Maybe I haven't been so focused on the voice, but like Labor's been doing a great job in so many other areas. And I think that the Liberal Party and the media focusing so much on the voice is leaving them blind to all these other victories Labor's got. Because Labor just got the housing bill passed a few weeks ago. Like after we thought they were going to have to go to a double dissolution election because of the Greens, the Greens ended up finding a deal with Labor and they passed it. So there's all this progress happening outside of Indigenous affairs in areas that I'm much stronger with, like foreign policy and economic issues, and even democratic government with the new anti-corruption commission. These wins, I think, is going to carry Labor to a victory at the next election, irrespective of this, frankly, disastrous referendum.
It will all be dependent. I mean, we can't really, like, this whole like Israel Palestine thing is really blowing up. So like that could turn into like a third world war at this point.
Well, actually, here's the thing. That's another thing, right? Penny Wong is like, we call for restraints, basically asking, Israel has a right to defend itself, but doesn't have a right to start murdering children in response. Yeah. And Dutton's like, that's unacceptable. Yeah. That shows you where he's going to be playing his cards. Like, I do think that Dutton is way overplaying his hand right now. And no, there's obviously pro and con. Pro, it probably means he's unelectable. Con, if he does get elected, Jesus Christ.
Oh god, I really, really hope he doesn't get elected.
Dutton is. If you thought Morrison and Abbott were bad, Dutton is going to be so, because there's a difference between if they win while campaigning on something and then turn it to be horrible, that's bad enough. But if they win campaigning on that horrible stuff, they're going to be even more incentivized to push it because they wouldn't. Yeah. In which case, they wouldn't be lying.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like Dutton doesn't kind of hold back on on what he believes in. He just kind of fucking spews it out. And if people are voting for him and supporting him, then like he would just have all of this mandate to do this and that. And yeah, exactly.
Look, I didn't campaign hugely in this voice, mainly because it's
I didn't campaign at all.
Campaigning.
I didn't campaign at all. It wasn't.
However, you can be as sure as hell that I'll be campaigning to prevent Dutton becoming our next Prime Minister.
Uh-huh.
Can I just say, like, before we finish wrapping up, it's like,
Yeah.
we've had some strong words, and I know maybe some conservatives are listening to this. I just want to let you know that, like, at the end of the day, we are just concerned for Indigenous people. They are 3% of our population, but have much lower life expectancy. They're struggling to find work, and a lot of their communities are an absolute mess. And what me and Aussies Elect are trying to do is we just want to see life improve for them. So we might be getting angry at people, and we're just frustrated
I
that
think a lot of
the pain of these people is being considered as a political tool for people with ambitions of getting government, and that's what's making us so angry. We hope we haven't offended you, but we just that's why we're getting so heated today.
I think there's people on the right sort of understand that. I think there's a lot of them that do believe there are a lot of racist people on the right that do believe either, you know, Indigenous people, you can't save them. There's nothing you could do for them. They've got everything already, and you can't, and like all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of people who believe in that. There's a lot of people who don't believe in, you know, any kind of recognition in the Constitution, all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of people who on the right who believe that, you know, that you basically need that there needs to be a real conversation about practical solutions on how to sort out the crisis going on with Indigenous communities. And I think that if the No campaign was focused on that mainly, that like this voice is all, you know, maybe some elders, you know, said that they want this, but really we don't believe this is you know, the kind of practical solution that is important, that we should be focusing on. If the conversation was about that, I would have been much more on board with like with understanding the No campaign, and I wouldn't have all this vitriol, you know, against the No campaign, as it ended up.
All right, and with that, we're at the end of the video. Thanks for having me on today, Aussies Elect. Hopefully, we'll meet up again for another.
Yeah, it's going to be a while before something is going to happen.
Maybe
really.
we might do a 1 year out review for the 2025 election, or maybe we won't see each other until the. I think it's the the NT election. I think is the next one coming up midway through next year.
Oh, okay, right. Well,
it's like
no,
August.
I think I'll be doing videos about stuff that aren't to do with elections. I mean, this video,
which I probably won't be in.
No, you might be in it. You might be in it because I mean, this video really wasn't about. Most of it wasn't about the election. It wasn't about like the analysis of polls or the analysis of results. Really, you know, we didn't even talk about the fact that like the only 3 seats in Queensland that voted for the Voice were the Green seats, which is kind of amusing. So we didn't talk about a lot of that stuff. It was mainly us, just our sort of our political opinions. So maybe this is sort of like a divergence of a point on this channel where we are talking more about just general, like, you know, what's happening in Australian politics and our opinions on it. So if people are interested in that, then let us know. I mean, this has been a long one, but this has been, I think, it's been good to get sort of my thoughts out, and I'm sure it's good for you to get your thoughts out, Sormon. Am I right?
Yeah, I was glad to get my thoughts out.
Okay, everybody. Thank you for watching. Yeah, we probably missed a ton, but yeah, it's a big conversation, and it's been a long 6 months or however long it's been for this thing, and honestly, I'm pretty glad it's over, and we can focus on other political issues. All right, goodbye.
Hey.